Set. Secure. Automation and orchestration. Endpoint detection and response. Network visibility. Cloud, containers, DevSecOps, threat intelligence, security platforms. Wondering how to keep up with all the latest security products and trends while still keeping your organization safe? Then stick around to listen to Ready, Set, Secure, the Set Solutions Podcast.
And hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 54 of Ready, Set, Secure, Set Solutions Podcast and live stream. It's been a little bit since we've done a live stream. Hope everybody's doing well out there on this beautiful Monday, or probably cold Monday. It's been cold everywhere, unseasonably cold this time of year. But I think this is our last one. I keep saying that every year, and then we have another one.
It looks like it's probably the last one.
All right. Well, the pollen's been going crazy. It's been killing me. So everybody, Michael Farnham, as usual here, CTO with Set Solutions. Glad to see everybody on. And as usual, Mr. Greg Porterfield, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well. I'm taking a break from a CTF this weekend. So
really?
Yeah.
You did a CTF this weekend.
Still doing it.
Is it going all week or?
It goes through Wednesday.
Nice.
So it's Hack the Box's Cyberpocalypse.
Nice.
Having a lot of fun with that.
Very cool. This is what Craig does on the weekend.
This is what I do.
He has a good time. Yep. Well, thank you again, always, for having you. Good to have you. And our special guest today, Mr. Chris Dobrik, who is the Armis VP of Product and Industry Solutions at Armis. How you doing, Chris?
Doing well, Michael. Thanks, and happy first day of spring. Hopefully that cold weather is going to go away now.
Wow.
Today's first day of spring, yeah.
Okay, that's why it's warming up then. It's just magic. You just push a button and everything is warm. So. Well, happy first day of spring to you as well. Very glad to have you. Thank you very much for coming on, sponsoring the podcast. Really appreciate it. Armis is a big partner of ours. We love doing stuff with Armis. So we'll get into some cool Armis stuff in a little while and let you tout your wares. But first, we're going to be educational and talk about, well, not educational because we're going to talk about Set Solutions. Maybe that's educational. We'll be talking about some stuff we've got going on, and then we'll get into the main segment. Armis put out a white paper on Cyberwarfare and really good stuff. A lot of good information. Talked to a lot of their customers, some of our mutual customers, and it's some really good information. So we'll be going into that. But before we get into that, I'll talk about Set Solutions. So the Set Solutions segment, for all you real Cajuns, or if you got Cajuns inside of you somewhere, we got a crawfish boil going on up in Dallas. It's this Thursday, actually. So for any of our listeners who are in that area or planning on being in that area, let your Set Solutions account manager know there's going to be some crawfish, some mud bugs, whatever you want to call them. Hard to eat, but they're good. I'm sorry that I'm not going to be there because I love good crawfish. On April 7th, up in Oklahoma, B-Sides Oklahoma is up there. We're going to be sponsoring that.
Very cool.
Yep, that's on April 7th. We like to support the community, so I'm really excited about that. I'm going to try to make it up for that one. And my son lives up there in Tulsa too, so it's going to be good. I'm going to try to go see him and my daughter-in-law. Then we've got at RSA this year, we've got a small group going. We're not going to have a big suite and all that stuff like we normally do, but if you're going to be at RSA, you want to spend some time with us. We've got some salespeople and some executives going out there, so let us know. We'll be running around San Francisco for the week.
Hutch is talking out there too.
Oh yeah, that's right. Hutch is our Justin Hutchins, aka Hutch, who has been on this and who's our research and development practice manager, is going to be speaking out there as well. So that's thank you for that reminder. That was good. And then we've got a golf tournament coming up. That's our yearly golf tournament. We do everything's about Northland, not any Southland stuff this year. So that's up in Dallas as well. That's on May 5th. That ought to be a lot of fun because the day before we got May 4th. So we're doing some Star Wars theme, May the 4th be with you stuff. And it's also Cinco de Mayo. So we've got some celebration of that holiday. So we're going to have a really weird kind of Star Wars and Cinco de Mayo theme thing going on. Should be fun.
Okay.
I think Jeff Patton's wearing who's our regional director up there, is wearing a Mexican flag kilt, if I remember correctly. I think he is. I'm not
Should
sure.
be a sight to see.
It's sure anytime. Yeah, he wears a kilt there every year. So that's the latest and greatest on Set Solutions and all the stuff we've got going on. Please let us know if you want to do any of that stuff. Should be fun and educational as well, especially those conferences. So we usually do a news segment here. We're gonna skip that because we want to give Armis plenty of time, and we really want to have plenty of time to talk about the cyber warfare report that they put out. So, Chris, if you can, and I realize I didn't give you a whole lot of time to introduce yourself. I didn't give you any time. I just started talking. So, if you could introduce yourself real fast and maybe start using that as a segue to kind of talk about this report and what your part was in the report and so on and so forth. And then we'll dig into all the questions and stuff.
Sure. Sounds great. Once again, Chris Dobrik, I lead our product and industry solutions marketing team. And so I joined Armis 3.5, going on 4 years ago now. So it's really been a fun journey to be at the company in the very, very early stages. And then, just a few weeks ago, we did an announcement about reaching Centaur status, which is a pretty interesting milestone for startups. So we've now hit over 100 million in revenue, which is phenomenal. But that's not what I'm here to talk about today. What I wanted to talk about is the cybersecurity, or the Trends in Cyber Warfare report that we put out in January, which was some really interesting data. We went out and surveyed a little over 6,000 IT and security professionals around the globe, companies that are more than 100 people, but hit a variety of different industries. We did regional surveys in the U.S., in parts of Western Europe, as well as Australia, Singapore, and Japan. So we get a really good cross-section of data. And we can dive into the specific findings there, but a lot of very interesting stuff that we were able to determine, not only from the survey itself, but just going into our own asset intelligence engine and comparing what we were seeing in the data as well as what we're seeing live in our customer environments right now.
Yeah, so not just anecdotal info, but actual data that's backing it up and confirming some of that survey data. So, yeah, I mean, I love the fact that it's global. Not just the U.S. Because obviously cyber warfare is a global thing now. We're starting to see some of those things really pop up as like test beds over in the Ukraine war, and how do we use this to affect actual kinetic warfare? What is this? What does this do there? I mean, the big thing that I got out of it, we always want to prep and get ready for these. And I think I got 2 pages in and I was like, well, this is a huge point. And what it was kind of that, I hesitate to use the word FUD because that has this negative connotation, but really it is fear and uncertainty and doubt. It's not in a context of us trying to sell something, but there is a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt going on these days when it comes to the cybersecurity landscape of how it's affecting decisions that some of our customers make and how decisions that companies are making. And for years and years and years, we've had this whole push towards digital transformation, which we kind of have to define a little bit in the context here, which generally means moving to the cloud and using the cloud in all of its different aspects. And that is slowing that process down for some customers. They're looking at some companies, they're looking at that and going, I don't know that I want to make this move because I've got now a much larger attack surface in the cloud versus being able to control that where I've just got some data centers set up and I can control that in and out. Now I've got all of these things I've got to worry about, different avenues into my environment. And it's making them stop and go, do I want to make this move? Because if somebody can, and we'll talk about nation states in a little bit, but if somebody starts coming after me based on my association with whatever, and this goes both ways. It's not just bad guys versus good guys. I mean, this just affects globally anybody. So that was the big thing for me as one of the points. And I don't know, Chris, what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, probably the biggest thing I took away, Michael and Greg, was it's the themes that you were talking about. There's cyber warfare is most of the respondents to the survey felt they weren't prepared for it, and they weren't taking it seriously necessarily. But that didn't jive with the fact that it's actually getting people to stop or slow down their digital transformation. So there was a bit of a cognizant disconnect in that regard. So that surprised me somewhat, right? In many respects, it's probably because, cyber warfare, it's in a far off land, right? It's it's something that impacts somebody else. But be that as it may, that was interesting to me. It's something they don't feel prepared for necessarily, but the threat of it, and probably just cyber criminal activity in general, is getting them to rethink their digital transformation plans.
I think that probably that resonates more than I think that's probably a lot to do with it. It's not so much the threat of cyber warfare so much as the cyber activity. So threat actors and how much of the time the news is about a new breach, a new attack, a new vulnerability that leads to an attack or a breach. Part of it I would take is the kind of slowdown on the transformations is people are paying attention and wondering how much attack surface to open up. Doing things in the cloud, 10 years ago, relatively straightforward. You pop a service, you throw your website on it, you put some databases in, wasn't really that big of a deal. Today, to get that stuff right, because of the layering and all of the various services and the configurations that in a kind of shared responsibility model, you're as responsible to make that secure as they are. And I think our big vendors, our big providers have done a good job providing infrastructure that is strong, but they've made it very, very flexible to handle lots of use cases. That flexibility comes with configuration. From the configuration comes mistakes. And I think people are a little bit gun shy or paralyzed in trying to figure out how to do it right. I've seen this in stuff that I've been trying to build of finding the right reference to how to do something correctly is very difficult. And knowing what the stakes are now of if you screw this up, you're opening up not only yourself, your product, or your organization, you could be opening up something quite a bit deeper. And I think that's making people pause, probably as they always have been or always should have been. But now we're seeing it more readily of people are trying to expand, but they don't know how to do it right.
Well, and it's not just a typical AWS or Azure either. It's just SaaS vendors. I mean, and using everybody with your critical infrastructure that was exchanged, not critical infrastructure in the OT world, but critical infrastructure for an organization, Exchange, AD, all of those things. They're now a lot of it is up in the cloud if you're using that. Small organization, small nonprofit that I run, I was trying to figure out 2FA the other day on Azure. And it was just like, I've got 20 people in this company. Why is this so hard? This is ridiculous. It's not easy to find all those bells and whistles because the more knobs you provide, to your point, the more you can mess them up. So
yeah,
no, gosh.
and Greg and Michael, even above and beyond just the digital transformation move to the cloud, the configuration challenges that we talked about. Now think of all the different systems that are accessing those services. It used to be we just were concerned about the traditional IT kit, right? Laptops, servers, mobile phones, but now the number of proverbial IoT and or OT technology that is connecting to those services widely broadens the attack surface. And unfortunately, all the security stacks that, the three of us been spending our careers for the last many, many years building didn't contemplate those sorts of kit necessarily. So when one is looking at that attack surface, one has to, widen the aperture, so to speak, to include not only the traditional IT kit, but also the IoT, OT, IOMT, IoT, choose your favorite acronym there, but it's a bunch of devices that are, they have outbound connections to the internet, they have processors, they have memories, and guess what? The bad guys go looking for them.
Yeah, it wasn't probably 4 years ago. I can't remember the name of that company, but the one that would go out and look for open S3 buckets and just scour the internet for those and find data just sitting out there. And it's simply because somebody by default, if you didn't click a certain button, or if you did, if they changed the behavior and it wasn't default, you would say, oh, well, I just need to open this up real fast so we can test connectivity and forget to close it. And then here you've got all of these things. So the different ways of connecting in the attack surface. And to your point, Chris, all of the different OTs, IoTs that go along with it. It's scary. It really is. And I know as any modern infrastructure company that's trying to use that and to use serverless and do all the things that have their developers do. I mean, it's just so many ways to come at you when you digitally transform.
Yeah, here's an interesting one for you. So our researchers found some vulnerabilities in American Power Conversion UPSs.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting, right?
There's been a lot of those, yeah.
Yeah. So these APC backup battery systems, they sit in data centers, but you plug them into the Ethernet. They have an outbound connection that is designed to actually help with the the maintenance of firmware and so on and so forth. However, we found some vulnerabilities that would allow for RCEs to run on those, and we could actually demonstrate that we could take control of a UPS, muck with the voltages, and get the thing to smoke. So now imagine what that's like in a data center when you set off the halon systems. But my point is here, this is back to widening the aperture and making sure you understand what's connected to your network and what it's doing.
Absolutely.
Those vulnerabilities for the APCs kind of made me laugh, because it reminded me of 2015, 2016, the kind of proof of concept of I think it may have been the first, probably US demonstrated, of the transformation from digital to kinetic war of blowing up a generator. And they gave it a network connection. It was the first time they had done that and proved, oh yeah, this is real now. And since then, there have been a number of crossover type attacks. We'll leave them off the table for the moment for obvious reasons. But I think that as more things are connected, it's important to remember why we're connecting things. The kind of impression is that we want to wire everything. Everything needs to be put online. How? Because we need to manage it, whether it's because staff shortages or locations or any number of things. We'll just throw it online and see what happens. And that's what leads to things like the water plant outside Tampa.
I still contend that they were trying to go after Brady because that was right when the Super Bowl was happening.
It may have, but it's how. As security people, we're looking at, okay, if you're going to put it online, then you have to do this. There's always that ultimatum of, yes, we're going to let you do this, but we're going to need some control here, because we don't want that. When I put things on in my house, it's the same thing of, if it's talking on the wireless at home, who cares? As soon as it starts reaching out or wants to let an app talk inbound, it's oh, now we got conversations. And that's the part that I think we need to take more time to figure out of, do we need to really connect all this stuff? Can we take a step back and go, okay, jump boxes were a thing for a while to isolate things. Maybe we don't need everything directly hardwired to the internet. Just a thought.
You're no fun.
Yeah, well, then there's also the conventional wisdom, right, that you could just put a security agent on it. Well, fact of the matter is, a lot of these things, you can't accommodate that stuff, right? These, think of a non-IT device that is optimized for cost. So yes, it has a processor. Yes, it has memory. But not necessarily enough to host a full-blown security agent. So the question is, how do you identify that? How do you classify it? How do you profile it? How do you look at communications behavior to know if it's regular or anomalous? These are all the additional things that one must think about in this expanded attack surface.
Well,
absolutely.
Heck, it's hard enough. I mean, when you've got a developer who creates a container that's so locked that you can't get an agent on it, and that's just software. You imagine how difficult it is to get there. How hard it is to get it on a device that's some, custom flavor of Linux sitting on there that you have no idea if it's even compatible,
or if you've got regulatory constraints. Like we see this in healthcare, right? Because these things are all regulated by the FDA, and so the number of Windows 7 and Windows 10 old build devices we see that are
If you're
connected
lucky,
to,
Chris.
yeah.
Windows 7.
These are connected to medical devices, but by FDA regulation, you can't just update them willy-nilly like we can in traditional IT.
The good old days when I was in healthcare, my first stint, and we were controlling the MRIs via a DOS machine. Oh man, I miss those days. Probably a lot less susceptible to attack than some Windows machines. But well, I think Greg, you wanted to specifically talk about a certain area that lit you up a little bit.
So the part of the report that, and there is a ton of good data in here. One of the kind of callouts for me was when it was looking at what organizations were planning to do. So this was broken down by the organizations who are already spending a fair amount, more than their peers in their cybersecurity efforts and things like this. They were planning to spend more. And that was kind of an interesting thing of there's a broad category. I think the report talks about the average being about 11% that an organization should plan on, or at least that's what the average is, what organization reporting that they're spending on IT. So the orgs that were spending more than that are responding saying, we're going to, not only are we doing more, but we're going to keep doing more. We have more investments to make. We have other things that we're going to go after. And that was interesting to me because these are the ones that were already kind of committed to this. They saw the writing on the wall years ago and said, nope, we're going to commit. It's not just bare minimum. We're not just going to get our, annual pen test and call it done for the year. They were involved in this process and not scared of spending money, and they're still not. They don't think that we've kind of turned that tide, that it's getting better. Okay, we can back the budget down. Those are the kind of interesting orgs that I think kind of leading that. For us, obviously, it's good. We love when organizations want to spend more money and get better tools and advance their roadmaps and all of this. But sooner or later, we will probably, if we ever solve this problem, start seeing them kind of ratchet it back down. It means we've kind of figured out the model, figured out how all this is going to work, and figured out how to do secure, not just security, but we've actually managed to lock things down. I don't think we're getting there anytime soon, but
yeah, I think our jobs are fairly secure for a while.
My lifetime at least. So kind of on the tail of the organizations that responded to saying that they're not taking it seriously enough, some of them are starting to figure out that they need to take it more. And I thought that those 2 points of many respondents, and I don't have the number in front of me, said they're worried because they're not taking it seriously enough. And on the other side of the table, you have the folks who were taking it and are still kind of ramping up.
Yeah,
Chris,
when I was going through the data, Greg, I had a similar reaction. So, when I correlate that to industries that we know spend heavily on security and seem to be investing further, they're going to fall into, critical infrastructure, oil, gas, financial services, that sort of thing, which is good news, right? Because those are the types of industries that would be targeted. Think about when, the three of us started our careers in security way back when. It was all about stealing data, right? Your personal credit card information out on the black web. But wind the clock forward to just, the beginning of 2020 in the pandemic, we saw, at least I saw, and I'm sure you guys would reinforce this, you saw this move from just stealing data to out and out extortion, where people were going and locking down people's data and extorting money out of them. And that was particularly acute in healthcare, which is sad on the one hand, but it's understandable on the other, right? You've got, institutions that are focused on delivering, care in a once in a lifetime pandemic situation. Their defenses are down, so the bad guys go out after them and extort them for money. But then wind the clock forward to just February last year in the Russian invasion of Ukraine. You're seeing a lot more of those efforts shift from extortion to now out and out disruption. So you guys highlighted the Ultima water facility hack in Florida. Think about Colonial Pipeline. Think about taking out a rail system. Think about taking out the FAA systems. All of a sudden, this creates societal havoc as well. So those industries we see are certainly increasing their spending. The thing that's a bit disconcerting to me is the folks who are, not taking this seriously and not increasing their security budgets, right? That's the thing I think we need to all be worried about.
Well, I mean, part of your point is if you want to increase it for extortion purposes, but now you've got nation states that are. I mean, we've had that with a few, the North Koreas, the Chinas, the Russias, but they're either funding those directly now or at least not going after somebody who's causing havoc, even if they're just doing it to extort and raise money, right? Yeah, giving them safe harbor. So when you look at that and you realize, especially if you're part of one of those industries that needs to be increasing that, if you weren't, I absolutely would be concerned. And it's not just IT. I mean, it's cyber specifically to harden that. It would be a lot of concern around that. There's just too many people who have the means now via either, again, safe harbor and being able to extort and not have to worry about it, or directly having nation states funding them to help cause havoc, and then their official groups that they're building. I mean, if you're not looking at this, even if you're not in one of those industries, as potential concern to increase your budget, I don't know.
I think everybody should be looking really closely at it and figuring out not, should we increase it? It's really how much can we afford to spend?
Yeah.
And looking at it really, really effectively. There are too many breaches that cost. We talked about the extortion. So we have gone from kind of viruses that just lock up a machine, you reboot it, you reload it, and you go on about your day. Roaming profiles help solve that. So people can just move from one machine to another and all of these kinds of things. As things have advanced, now we're locking up data, and from one machine it bounced to another machine, and they're doing this at speed. So they're going to start locking things, but before they ever got to the point where they pulled the trigger, so whether this is a nation state attack or a criminal element or anything like this, before they lock down those devices, they've done their recon. Either was sold to them by an access broker or something like this. They know what they can and cannot get a hold of. They have everything ready to go. They push a button, grab and yank all the data out of the environment that they can, and then lock everything down. And adding insult to injury, the ransom wasn't enough. So now it's ransomware times 2. You pay to get your data back. You also have to pay extra to keep it off the internet. And this is where I think modern organizations really need to be considering, how much would a breach cost? We've been saying that for a decade. It's not anything new. But now we have to start adding multipliers, because if you do business in Europe, you now have GDPR. If you leak, information that you weren't supposed to have, that you're not authorized to have, welcome to fines that multiply very quickly. That extortion, the ransomware, the cost of repair, all of these things go up. And then you add, if it's a big event and it affects the supply chain bad enough, you may not be able to recover, because you may not be able to just buy new laptops or server or whatever. The cost of not investing, the cost of not getting ahead of, or at least trying to get ahead of this, is far outweighed by the cost of what can happen. And the velocity is, thanks to the kind of loss of control of some of the tools. You have shadow brokers that released out some of the NSA tools. These are not, they're not novel attacks. None of this stuff is really, really new 0 days. This is stuff that's years old. Those exploits are out there. And as automation gets more and more velocity with bad actors and criminal organizations, they're going to get ahead. They're going to go faster than what we're currently seeing. And it's, I sit and look at a 0 day dropping going, oh God, we need to patch like right now. Like it drops on Friday, we must patch by Saturday, because the bad people out there are going to start hitting my infrastructure.
Exploits are ready to go.
That's not quite true, but it's getting close. Certainly the bug bounty hunter are out there doing that. So it's definitely time to look at how much can your organization lock down and how fast can you get a hold of it? And whatever data you have you put the right walls around it? Because that's what's after. They're not trying to lock up your infrastructure. They're trying to get your data. So reduce the amount of data that you have, protect it as best as you can manage.
Yeah, I don't know how to add to that. That was
I'll just say, yeah, Greg, that was epic. But the only thing I'll add is like the economics are favoring the bad guys right now.
yeah.
I mean, we're seeing business models being built around this, right? Ransomware as a service, as an example, it makes our job as security professionals even harder when you've got the economic incentives favoring that behavior. I'm afraid it's something we're going to have to figure out how to combat.
Yes.
I did like seeing FBI go proactive and I can't remember the name of the gang they took down.
Oh, but, from the Colonial Pipeline.
Yeah, they took them out here.
Reval.
I don't know if it was here recent, just like in the last month.
Last 30, 45 days. You're right.
Yeah, the FBI went proactive, took somebody down, and I just don't. It's just coming to. I just can't remember the name of which one they took down, but they took down their infrastructure. They went proactive, and I do think that you're going to have to see more of that. And this is, I listened to another podcast, Risky Business, and they've talked about that for quite a while, that they wanted to see that start happening. And Pat always calls it, unleashing the hounds. And I, like, every time I'm like, please, we've got to go after them. I mean, we just can't keep letting them just have carte blanche out there. Even with Safe Harbor, it's like you can still take out their infrastructure without going across a physical boundary to get some. Even in non-extradition countries, you can still go after their infrastructure. I know there's legal things to that, but we've got to be more proactive on that kind of thing.
We can't, but the agencies and the government.
No, not us. We meaning our government doing that. No, we cannot legally do that.
No, but I do.
That's the other thing is, and sorry, Chris, but that's the other thing is that those organizations or those countries that have that safe harbor, they actually encourage it.
Yep.
And will let them do it. So we are at a disadvantage, but we've got to have. Again, I'm not advocating for us, creating cyber militias, but the government's got to do something. They're in the perfect position to do it, and they have the resources to do it. So
yeah, that's one of the things we talk about in the report. Is not just nation states, but nation state affiliated organizations. Yep. But to the point of this discussion, I personally believe in the increased public private partnership is going to be essential. I for one have been impressed with what CISA has been doing of late, particularly about notifications around vulnerabilities in OT. Obviously the operational technology is running critical infrastructure that can be highly disruptive if organizations are taken out. And so CISA has done a good job of making us aware of these things and staying on top of that. So more of that information sharing, more of that public-private partnership, I think, is going to be essential here.
Yeah, I think you can reach that without having the same level of fear that people have kind of pushed back on that private-public, because they don't want people knowing what's going on in their organization. It's like, well, you can reach a point where you're sharing information without everybody knowing which firewall you have and this and that and the other, right? So I agree 100%, Chris, that partnership is bearing fruit, and I think it'll keep being better. We're figuring it out. It's taking a while. Mm-hmm. Well, obviously I say this every time, we could talk about this forever, but we can't. So Chris, I wanted to give you a chance. And once again, thank you for sponsoring the podcast. We really appreciate it. Appreciate your partnership. Wanted to give you a few minutes here to talk about Armis and, kind of how you protect against some of this stuff on this report, what Armis does.
Oh, great, Michael. Thanks. Really appreciate the wonderful partnership we have with Set Solutions, and looking to leverage things like this to actually just make that better for our collective customers. But Armis, as a company, as a technology, as a product, is really designed from the ground up to solve some of these key problems, particularly when you think about what I was describing previously about the inability to see everything in the environment. wind back to what I said previously about the security stacks that we all have built over the course of the last 15, 20 years. We're really oriented around that IT kit and putting security agents out on them and monitoring what's going on there. But what we did at Armis is we recognized that many, many, many more devices were going to be connected to the network, many more assets, all of whom weren't able to be adequately even discovered by the traditional toolkit. So what we did at Armis was figured out a rather novel way to do identification, classification, and profiling of those devices without having to deploy agents in the networks. So we can use network traffic to actually inspect and figure out what's going on there, and then layer on top of that a behavioral analysis. So not only can we identify what a device is doing, but what it should be doing, what it's talking with, what it's communicating with, determine anomalies, alert the infrastructure so you can actually remediate. Of late, a big problem that we've run into and that we're solving is this one: is why is asset management so hard in everybody's environment, right? And the fundamental truth there is just we've got too many tools, right? And nobody was doing a good job of aggregating all that data in a common view that allowed you to do very simple use cases like identification of tech debt or security gap analysis, or I've been relying upon my CMDB to give me information about everything in the environment, but the CMDB is woefully out of date and highly inaccurate. So the other big use case we've been solving is just fundamental asset inventory and asset management in environments, so you can have a single unified view of what you have, so you can form those simple use cases. And then above and beyond that, you can use the platform to assess your overall risk, do active threat hunting in your environment, a whole number of things that we and Set Solutions do together. So fantastic time. Thanks for the airtime on Armis, but hopefully the audience will get a chance to work with you all and us to take a look at what we have.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that rundown. We're going to include links to the report for people to get that. We've got a couple of articles that were around the report. And I think all of that, you can really learn about what Armis does. You can always reach out to Set Solutions, obviously, and we can get you connected with Armis. It's great partnership, great product. Really try to take advantage of it if you're in some of these environments where Armis can help, and they can help in a lot of different places. So Chris, thank you very much for joining us. Really appreciate you sharing the report, sharing your insights and your knowledge, and telling us about Armis. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, guys. Thanks so much. And again, happy first day of spring.
Yeah, same to you. Same to you. Greg, any parting thoughts?
No, I think I covered what I wanted.
You went on an epic dialogue. That was fantastic. We need to save that for the ages. That was fantastic. I was really like, wow, I don't know what to add to that. That was great. Well, thank you once again. Glad you're here as always. And everybody, thank you for being on episode 54. And hopefully we'll see you on episode 55 in not too long. Bye-bye.